Not long after Ken Kesey died in 2001, I staged a private wake for my literary hero by visiting the Bay Haven, an ancient tavern on Newport's bayfront. There I noticed a poster of photographs from Sometimes a Great Notion, the movie. The cinematic adaptation of Kesey's novel starred Paul Newman. It was filmed in Lincoln County on the Oregon coast in the summer of 1970 and included scenes shot in the Bay Haven, which stood in for the Snag Saloon from the novel. It's pretty much a cult film in the Northwest, but has disappeared from the spotlight and was never mentioned outside of Oregon when Newman passed away in 2008. It was raining that afternoon, which was perfect because Sometimes a Great Notion is the greatest novel in the history of world literature on the subject of rain. I sat down on a swiveling wood stool and looked around at the tavern, admiring all the fishing and logging memorabilia that decorated the place. It was right out of Kesey's novel, and I felt like the jukebox should have been playing some of the classic honky-tonk folk music from the 40s and 50s that inhabits the novel. Eddie Arnold, Governor Jim Davis, Hank Snow, Jimmy Rogers, Burl Ives, and Leadbelly, who immortalized the classic folk song, Goodnight, Irene. I'd read the novel and watched the movie several times. I could never understand how Newman, who also produced and directed the film, didn't use honky-tonk and folk music in the movie. Instead, he hired Henry Mancini of Pink Panther fame to score the film's soundtrack. And the result is terrible. It's gutless. Something Kesey would never have listened to. It doesn't even include Goodnight, Irene, the song Kesey derived the title of the novel from.
Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in the town. Sometimes I get a great notion to jump in the river and drown.
Yeah, I asked the bartender and a few other patrons if they'd seen the movie. They all had, and they all agreed that the most memorable scene was when one of the characters, Joe Ben, drowns under a log in the estuary as the tide rises. I also asked if they'd read the novel, which unfolds the epic story of the family of loggers, the Stampers, embroiled in conflicts with each other and their community. The novel takes place on the Oregon coast and is a dense, sprawling, manic 600-page book with multiple narrators, looping storylines, and a stream of consciousness explosions of nature that pretty much make it the greatest novel ever set in the Pacific Northwest. Many readers never finish it. But those who do become fanatics and read it like scripture. Now, as we talked about the book and the movie, a bearded man wearing a red baseball cap emerged from an alcove sheltering the video poker machines. He moved toward me holding a Hamm's can and sat next to me at the bar. He said he had a story about Paul Newman. Would I like to hear it? Yes, I would. I ordered him another Hamm's, and the bartender produced it with stunning alacrity. I looked at the man. He appeared anywhere from 40 to 70 years old, or what I call OTA, Oregon Tavern age. The story went, one rainy night in 1970, the man was drinking in a tavern in Toledo, 8 miles east of Newport. In walked an unaccompanied Paul Newman carrying a chainsaw. He was wearing a fake chest, said the man. The man explained that Newman wore some kind of padding under his shirt to appear bulkier. That Newman was still wearing the padding and carried the chainsaw meant that he probably came right off location in and around Toledo where many of the scenes from the movie were shot. The man moved closer to me. He looked me straight in the eyes. This was serious. According to the man, Newman didn't say anything. The patrons recognized him because, well, at the time, he was the biggest movie star in the world. He also had a notorious reputation in the industry for being one of the biggest practical jokers in the history of Hollywood, such as the time he used an arc welder to cut a producer's sports car in half, or the time he used a chainsaw and destroyed the desk of the director of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid because of a dispute over a liquor tab. Newman fired up the chainsaw. He sawed the legs off the pool table and sent the slate crashing to the floor. He left without saying a word. Come on, you're kidding me, I said. I reminded him of the scene from the movie where Newman's character enters a union office with a chainsaw and cuts up the place. I know that scene, he said. That was acting in a bar in Toledo. Newman was there. He was drunk out of his mind. I have no reason to lie. I don't even know you. A few minutes later, the man disappeared, and I never got his name. I drank my beer. I ordered another one. Then I walked out of the Bay Haven dazed, wondering if this fantastic story was true. I didn't investigate it back then, but knew one day I would undertake a mission to discover if Paul Newman really did enact the greatest drinking story in Oregon history. The mission is over. And in my new book, Sometimes a Great Movie, Paul Newman, Ken Kesey, and the filming of the great Oregon novel, I hunt down the legend and discover the truth. I know what happened that night in Toledo. You have to buy the book. I'm not going to give it away. But one thing I don't understand about the movie is the omission of Goodnight, Irene. Well, tonight on Livewire, we redress this oversight, and I have just the gritty, bluesy, hard-working, logger-type Oregon punk rock and roller for the job. He's standing to my right. Ladies and gentlemen, now, Michael Dean Damron will now perform Goodnight, Irene, the way I believe Ken Kesey would have loved to hear it in the Snag Saloon on a black, stormy night, and to quote the best line from Sometimes a Great Notion, "Give me a dark, smeary, shiny night full of rain. That's when the fear starts. That's when you sell the juice."
Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in a town. Sometimes I get a great notion to jump in the river and drown. Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Well, I asked your mama for you. She told me you was too young. Now I don't ever wanna see your face no more. I wish I never was born. Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Now, Irene, you know I love you, and I will till the seas all run dry. But if Irene turns her back on me, I'll just take this morphine and die. Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. I'll see you in my dreams. I'll see you. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Scott Love and Michael Dean Damron. You've been listening to a snippet of Livewire, the radio variety show that's like a chew toy for your brain. For more information about the show or to download our podcast, visit livewireradio.org.